Now that we learned how to add routing to an existing Angular project, we're going to demonstrate how to create a Bootstrap sign-in form. So we're going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. We'll stop our server, and we want to generate a new component. And the name of this component is going to be sign-in. I'm going to go ahead and close out the terminal window. We'll close all the different windows we have open. We're going to want to update our routing file, so we'll open up the app.routing.ts file. And inside here, we're going to go ahead and import over the sign-in component we just created. And then for our first path, instead of directing them to the home component, we're going to direct them to the sign-in component. Okay, with that in place, let's go ahead and open up the sign-in component. We're going to create a CSS class, and this class is going to be the container for our sign-in form. So I'm going to say sign-in-container. This container is going to have a width of 35%. We're going to have margin 0 auto. And then we're going to have a margin top of 10%. All right, I'll close out these two windows. We'll open up our actual HTML file for our sign-in component. And like I said, we're going to be using a Bootstrap form for this. So we're going to say div class. This is going to be a card. So we're going to use Bootstrap's card class. And then we're also going to use our sign-in container that we just created. So this card needs to have a body. So we'll say div class card body. We also need to have a title. So we're going to say h3. And this is going to be card title. And we'll just say sign in. Underneath our title, we want to have a form. So we're going to say form. And this is going to be card text as the class that we're going to use. Inside this, we're going to have divs, and each of these div sections are going to represent the fields that we're going to be using, as well as the labels. So we're going to say form group. And then the first item is going to be a label. And then we're going to say label 4, text username. And then we'll give it a name of username. We'll have an input field next to it, and that'll be of type text. This is going to be a form control, so we're going to use Bootstrap's form control class. We're going to give it an ID of text username. And we're also going to give it a placeholder. And we'll just say enter your username. So then we're going to add another div form group. And the second div form group is going to be for the password. Let me just fix that error. So we're going to have a label. And this label is going to be for text password. And then the label is going to be password. We also want to have an input of type password. The class is going to be form control, since this is a part of our form. ID is going to be text password. And then we'll have a placeholder of enter your password. So we also want to have a button so that a user can submit the form. So we're going to say div class form group. Inside this form group, we're going to have a single button, and that button is going to be a primary button. So we're going to use Bootstrap's primary class. So we're going to say class button, and then button primary. We want this to float to the right, so we're going to add a class called float right. We're also going to want to have an onClick event. In Angular, to create onClick events, you use an opening and closing parentheses, and then inside that you pass in a function that you would have defined inside your TypeScript file. So in this case, we're going to say sign in. So we need to change this to click equals, and then inside the parameters is where we're going to say the actual function, so sign in. So this represents an onClick event, and then inside the quotation marks is where we actually pass in the function that we're going to define inside of our TypeScript file. And then we'll say submit. We'll go ahead and save that. And then now we need to open up our TypeScript file and actually add that function so that when users click on the button for submit, we can do some kind of behavior for them. So we'll open up the signin.component.ts file, and we need to define a function called sign-in. So I'm going to say sign in. And for now, we're just going to say alert user signed in, and we'll save it. With that in place, let's go and open a terminal window and test what we have. So we'll say ng-serve. All right, let's go and open up a terminal, open up the browser window. We'll hit refresh. And now let's go ahead and remove the /home, and we should see our sign-in form. And we do. We have the two fields, username, password, and if we click submit, we should have an alert message that pops up. And we do. It says user signed in. In the next lecture, we're going to demonstrate how to use query params to be able to pass over a value that will basically pretend like a user's logging into the system. So if you remember from the previous exercise, we had that is logged in variable. We're actually going to implement that through query params in the next lecture.